Hey, g'day, folks. How are you tonight? Just wanted to give you a little bit of a quick update on what things are going on in my world at the moment. I've had another pretty slow day, if I'm honest. I've had to go to the doctor, had to go and get some x-rays, got some really interesting pills, which I've just noticed have a big red ring around them that says, this medicine may affect mental alertness and or coordination. If affected, do not drive a motor vehicle or operate heavy machinery. Made a bit of a mistake. I was only meant to have one of those when I had the first one. I'm used to taking things in multiples, so I took two of them, and they are pretty hefty, so I could be a little garbled here for a little while. So a bit of an update on the foot. Don't really know what's going on. Did have x-rays today, and last night was a particularly bad night for whatever reason. It just wanted to throb and carry on like no get out. At any rate, it's done. So fixed, beautiful, sorted, and hopefully I'll get a report tomorrow from the quack to tell me whether or not there's actually anything broken in it. The lady today was bloody wonderful when she did the x-ray, and I got to admit, it's the first time I've been into a medical facility, be it a doctor or a radiologist, since well before the pandemic. And I was feeling a little unsettled going to the quack this morning. Didn't help that the quack wasn't anywhere local, and the GPS took me to a place that was about a block away from where the surgery actually was, and I had to walk there. And I could have driven, but didn't know where I was going, so I went up walking there. That didn't really help the foot, but at least he had something good to look at by the time I got there, because it sort of swelled up fairly significantly. At any rate, I should find out tomorrow whether or not there's any breaks. The lady who did the imagery couldn't see anything, but she said she wasn't looking for fine things either, so there might be a phone crack in there. Well, we'll see how it goes. Having said that, gave me some really good pain relief, and I'm suggesting it's pretty good because I'm not feeling anything at the moment, except maybe a bit angry about certain things in the world. I haven't really prepared anything for tonight's show, so I apologise. I've just been in and out of doctor's surgeries and sitting in bloody waiting rooms all day. So I've only seen certain limited stuff that's popped up today by way of intel, and I don't think there's anything spectacularly new that's coming up. What I have seen a fair bit of is a lot of try comfrey cream on it. Eve, yes, comfrey cream. I was only watching a video about that yesterday, the day before. What a very good thought. I will mark that. And in fact, I'm going to star your little thing so I can go back to it later. So some of the things that have been popping up today I've found quite encouraging. I haven't got it to show you because I haven't been in front of a computer to download the thing and hook it up. But Tony Abbott has been interviewed by someone and has come out in support of the no vote in a fairly strong manner. In fact, he's highlighted a number of the underhanded ways, let's call it, that Albanese's government is trying to force a yes vote through. And force it is. They're using mind control techniques, and Tony Abbott is pointing them out. Interesting stuff. So while I was looking at that today in line, waiting for, I don't know, doctor or x-ray, whatever it was, I fired off an email to him and asked whether or not he'd appear on this show. Who knows whether or not he'll agree or not. Hopefully I'll get a response in the next couple of days. But certainly what he said today, I wholeheartedly agree with. And while it wasn't addressing First Nations issues, it really was addressing the misuse of public monies in Albanese's attempt to try and force what he believes to be moderate changes to the Constitution. Now, there are a number of interesting things that have popped up on Facebook in the last couple of days, and I've shared a few of them on my Facebook page. You may or may not be a member of Facebook or my channel on Facebook. I don't know. But if you can get there and are a part of it, then I don't know, about 10 hours ago, I shared something from Carol Beachley. Now, I've been in contact with Carol. She found this on another site, and we're both waiting with bated breath to try and find out whether or not the documents that are referred to in this, what I'm about to read you, are in fact real. So bear in mind, what I'm about to read you is simply a Facebook post. I have not seen the documents that are apparently released now under Freedom of Information, and I am trying to find people who may have seen them or have access to them. But anyway, have a listen to this. Secret government documents have the National Indigenous Australians Agency was forced to release under Freedom of Information laws say that any voice to Parliament should be designed so that it could support and promote a treaty-making process. And what is the treaty? According to these secret documents, it must include a fixed percentage of gross national product, rates, land tax, and royalties. The document goes on to explain a treaty could include a proper say in decision-making. I'm not sure what they mean by a proper say in decision-making, because Indigenous are overrepresented, if anything, in our parliament. There's got 11% representation in the current parliament. So I'm wondering, that's more than you and I've got in a lot of cases. So anyway, the document goes on to explain a treaty could include a proper say in decision-making, the establishment of a truth commission. Doesn't that sound fun? Reparations, a financial settlement, such as seeking a percentage of our GDP. What is GDP? That is our gross domestic product. That is our economy. So what are they saying? They are saying they would like to get a percentage of our economy paid to the voice by way of reparations. The resolution of land, water, and resources issues, and recognition of authority and customary law. If you thought voting yes was going to get you resolution of land, water, and resource issues and recognition of authority and customary law was going to get you a win in what you currently believe is happening, you'd be very wrong. Our Indigenous at the moment are not under contract. As soon as they come under contract, they will lose all their rights to the land, the water, the resources, and they will be made to recognise the authority that's taken it from them, as we all will be. Black, white, or brindle, won't matter what colour you are when this change happens, folks. So bear that one in mind. Sorry, I digress from the post. So resolution of land, water, and resource issues, recognition of authority and customary law. This is a direct quote from the secret voice documents, right? Australia got a whole country for nothing. They haven't even begun to pay for it. That's a direct quote from these secret documents. Haven't seen these secret documents, apparently released under Freedom of Information, but that is a quote. Australia got a whole country for nothing. They haven't even begun to pay for it. According to these documents, they also want to abolish the Australian flag because the Australian flag symbolised the injustices of colonisation. What's modest about forcing you to change your flag or pay a percentage of the entire economy as reparations, because that's what Albo calls it, a modest adjustment to our constitution. Sounds like a huge change to me, the writer says. But let's be super clear. They go on to clarify how their plan works. They enshrine the divisive voice in the Constitution, and it's there forever. The voice forces Australians into treaty. The treaty means Australians pay a percentage of GDP. That's a percentage of our economy to the voice every year. Every year. On top of that, Australians are forced to pay rates, land taxes, and royalties to the voice. That's over and above, I suspect, what you're currently paying to things like council. So let's hope when the vast majority of Australians find that out and really understand what that's going to mean for their lives going forward, they find the truth out that they can't support a yes vote in what's going forward for the voice. This is not a helpful thing for our Indigenous people. By voting yes, you are taking their rights, their if you like, native rights away from them. And there is some argument to be had at this point in time. I received a very interesting email today. And while it might appear and sound, I'm going to read this to you, it might appear and sound a little harsh. I think it is a way a lot of people in Australia are feeling at the moment. So this came from one of you to me today. Problem number one, we are all born, we are all living on the land, not in it. Australia are indigenous to this land as you are indigenous to the planet Earth and are indigenous to where you were born. All are ab-original. That is a prefix, ab. It means not of. The current claimed to be First Peoples claim from Southeast, claim that they come from Southeast India, as their genetics are tracked back to there. They were called Dravidians. They routed and killed the people who were here before them, who were pygmy Melanesians from New Guinea, and the last remainders of them escaped to Tasmania, where the last survivor, Truganini, eventually passed on. There are no survivors known of the First Peoples who settled this land by simply arriving here and staying until they were hunted and killed on the mainland, i.e., there are no First Peoples here to claim anything from any other living being. Stop being conned by ignorant people and criminal liars. Problem number two. As all persons are artificial legal entities and we are living, breathing, sentient beings, nobody has authority over us, as governments and laws are all artificial, and we were and are created equal. The governments and laws are not equal to us in any way, shape, or form. Their constitution is subject to us, the people. The High Court of Australia has ruled that any entity that has an ABN is a trading company and comes under the Corporations Act 2001. No corporation which is artificial and without substance, with no length, breadth, or height, and occupies no space, can inflict any penalty on a sentient being, because the sentient beings are above them in the hierarchy of all things. The persons who administer these corporations are artificial and have no authority to administer over sentient beings without first obtaining fully informed consent. Where have we heard that before? Have you ever given fully informed consent to be treated as a slave? Think about it and wake up, or soon it will be all too late and all will be lost. The reason these pretenders have a hold over you is through their fear, or through your fear rather, and the fact that they have guns and jails. Now, I'm not sure if the gentleman who wrote that wants me to say his name, so I will hold off on that for a moment. But he does raise some very interesting points. Who are the First Nations people here? Because there is anthropological evidence of pygmies being the first people on this land, and those pygmies from Melanesia, from New Guinea, were here before what would be currently termed our Aboriginal peoples, who through their bloodlines have been traced back to, I think it said in the beginning, Southeast India or Indian region or somewhere like that. Now, the Dravidians, their genetics were tracked back to the first peoples who came from Southeast India or Asia. I'm guessing Southeast India doesn't seem quite right, but maybe. So a little bit of research to be done there. I haven't done any, but this fellow certainly seems to have done quite a lot. And I have heard a number of the arguments put forward about Truganini and his forebears. The Truganini story was obviously used by Midnight Oil in one of their songs. It was sold then as the story of the last Tasmanian Aboriginal, I think, from memory. But he was, in fact, from New Guinea and part of the Pygmy tribes that had been here before. So, I mean, to raise all this, does this just muddy the argument? Does it just confuse people on the no side of the vote, particularly? What is the real point of bringing that up? It's not really an arguable point if we haven't got to help our Aboriginal brothers and sisters understand all that. Because they don't have a claim, so to speak. Where does that leave the nation now? I don't think we can do that. At the end of the day, they are the oldest living people, certainly in this nation. And we need to make sure that anything that we do as a nation, and I hope we can do everything as a nation to include our can I say the excluded in society, the leveraged in society, the abused in society, both black and white, because it is for everyone that we have to do this. It's not just for one colour or another. We have to do this for everyone. And a no vote will ensure that the rights that are currently held by our Aboriginal friends will just remain as they are until such time as we can find a better solution. Now, that is the key issue here. Nobody in successive governments over successive generations have been able to come up with any kind of a solution in this area. Why is that? Well, because they throw money at it. That's my bet. They throw money at it. And there are certain elements within the community there, like there are in any community, who will see money and become greedy. I am sure, in fact, I know that has happened over the years. We won't get into it, but I do have some intimate knowledge of how it worked in the 70s and 80s, particularly down in Victoria. And from what I'm seeing, it's just been abused from those years, extrapolated upon, grown, massaged, improved upon, if you will. And now there are people who simply geared and educated to extract money from the government over just about anything. In fact, we were having a conversation earlier today about identifying as Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander, or identifying. The conversation started out as the transgender sports people who are currently, particularly the former men, now women, who are racing or competing at our highest levels, including at Olympic level, against women, biological women. Biological men are competing against biological women. Now, the general consensus of that conversation was they should all have their own competition. But when you think about it, let's use netball as the example. Hello, Sunflower. Thank you. When you think about it, let's use netball as the example. We already have mixed netball. Okay. And that's essentially what, if you like, a transgender netball team would be made up of, mixed people. But they wouldn't get the transgender tag. So it'd be male, female, and mixed then, maybe, at the Olympics or at those national sports levels. Do you think that would work? Well, then you've got a real problem too, because you'll have biological males transitioning to female, playing against females, biological females transitioning to males. Now, if you get a team of biological males transitioning to females playing against a team of biological females transitioning to males, you're going to have the same problem as you've got today in our pools and on our sports stadiums and tracks around the world. Somebody will be complaining because in that mixed sense, it's not going to be mixed. It's not going to be fair. And, those transitioned men are going to be pretty unhappy that the transitioned women are going to kick their asses in sport for the rest of their lives. So at what point do we draw a line under this and say, you go and be what you want to be, but do not expect the rest of the world to change it for you? I've never cared what somebody is sexually ever, whether you're gay, lesbian, trans, I don't know, whatever. Never, ever has it been an issue in my life, ever, until you guys made it one, right? Until you started forcing it down our throats, until you started injecting it into our schools, all right? That's stepping over the line, for me anyway. You could have gone off and lived your life. You could have transitioned quietly if you so desired. Yes, you'll always find people who don't understand why you would want to do such a thing. And in fact, increasingly on the net in the last week or so during various bouts of eye spinning, there are now huge amounts of detransitioning people coming out and explaining how they were manipulated into transitioning in the first place. And some of those have done the full transition and now are really missing the fact that they chopped their dicks off. Who knew? And they're crying about it. Okay, all right. I would have thought the time to cry about it would be right before they drew the scalpel out and you said, no, do I really want to do this? And not listen to the person who's been whispering in your ear saying, oh, yes, go on, you've never been happy. Well, maybe you just were not happy, but you were confused. And that's certainly the message that is being given out by a lot of these detransitioning folks who are now releasing videos all over the world. And it's harrowing. It's harrowing to watch because you can see the toll it has taken once that realization has come upon them that what they did, what they were led into, what they were convinced of, if not brainwashed into, was wrong. And now that they've transitioned, they've gone through it, maybe certainly it seems in most cases to a very, very great extent, if not the whole extent. And when the realization comes back that they're not really a woman or they're not really a man, because there are both in these detransitioning videos, it's not just a shock realization that, yeah, okay, they chopped their dick off or they chopped their boobs off or however that works. It's a realization of just the depth of stupidity that they've stemmed to, and then they're looking to blame that on the community they fell in with, and the little whispers in their ears and whatnot to convince them that they were going to transition or they needed to transition. And there are those sorts of horrible people that were standing there at doctor's appointments, talking them out of the doubts that they were having. I recommend you go and find some of these detransitioner videos. You'll find quite a lot of them, I think, on Telegram, but there are a few on YouTube too, and have a look on Rumble. It, as I said, can be quite harrowing viewing, and I do feel for those folks tremendously. But we do need to work forward on how we're going to deal with those sorts of folks, the folks who come to the conclusion about what the jibbity jab is all about. You'll be interested to note, if you haven't already, and I will have these figures up for you tomorrow if you haven't seen them already. In the UK, the BBC is now admitting that there are more deaths last year in 2022 of vaccinated folks, and these are unexpected deaths, over and above the national average. In fact, 62,000 over and above the national average. I believe Australia is currently sitting at a bit under 40,000 over the national average. Now, these are deaths that will not be able to be attributed to being the majority of them being unvaxxed. These are deaths that are very most definitely from once, twice, thrice, and occasionally up to 5 times jabbed in certain parts of the world. So those figures have come out, and the BBC have admitted, although they've done it in a way that unless you're actually reading it correctly, you probably won't take in that they admit that the deaths are extra, and there is no other way to explain them other than they are fully jabbed up folks who are filling up 62,000 extra seats in the death pile this year. Australia is suffering similarly. America, I think, to a greater extent. Got to remember too that all of that data has been compromised in the past. Even doctors today, I believe, are still not reporting as they should. Many of them won't. And even in the surgery I was at today, there was a sign up saying, roll your sleeve up for number 4 and number 5 if you're ready. So they're happy enough to take the money still. When people really do realise what's going on with that, I think it's going to make make for a very bad day in the doctor's world. Just having a bit of a look. Yeah, Shell, you're 100% right. Truly devastating for anything that or anyone that has been coerced into doing this. And I personally have some friends who are in exactly that bucket. Were coerced in a way. They'd lose their house otherwise. They were doing a course. And this is the way they got you in Queensland. If you were doing a disability support course, so you could go off and work in the NDIS or do disability support work, in this case, with severely disabled people. But part of that course meant you had to go and do 1 week's placement in an old folks home, and to go into an old folks home, you had to be jabbed. If you didn't get jabbed, go in and do your 1 week there, you could not get a pass in your course, regardless if you'd passed everything else with flying colours. So there was an element of resistance in the household to that, and they lasted as long as they possibly could, which was about 4 or 5 months. And eventually, under threat of losing their house, were coerced into taking the jab, doing the 1 week, getting the course completed, getting the paperwork, because that's all it was, a rubber stamp, and then being able to get a job and go to work and pay the mortgage. The things we do for debt, hey? So that's just one of my friends' stories who've been coerced into this. There are a myriad others. Some have been coerced by workmates, ridiculed, shamed. I would call it bullied in some cases. Certainly by management in some cases. Radio stations, I've heard stories of some management being quite forceful in that regard. That hasn't been my experience in the radio stations I've worked at. You were given, nobody told you what you should do. And I think I was just fortuitous at the time. Nobody else was coming into work, and they had no other choice, really. They had to get me. So, it was each to their own. That hasn't been the case in many places, radio and TV around the world. And certainly we know that a lot of the jabs that you've seen of the celebrities, the politicians and the media types on our televisions have been faked. Some not breaking the skin. You can actually see them squirted out behind them. Some do break the skin, probably saline or something along those lines. And we've seen paperwork actually confirming that saline will be in the shot. I want to say it was for Joe Biden. I don't think it really would have mattered. I mean, they could have injected him with God knows what. The brain was always going to fall over. And hasn't that got weird? I mean, he's over in Ireland the other day with the Irish Prime Minister and somebody else, all looking extremely important. It's a very formal thing outside the Irish Parliament, a formal gathering, a welcome, if you will. And the three of them turn around and walk up the steps to the open doors of the Irish Parliament. And there are two doormen stand there who stand in the way and shake their heads and just say, no, you can stay out there, but there's no bloody way you're coming inside here. And they close the doors on the Irish Parliament to them and turn their backs. And the three of them are left, turn around and address the cameras. So you might recall when Joe Biden was, I was going to say crowned. That isn't the way. When Joe Biden became president, after his inauguration, he drove to the White House. The vast majority of military along that route turned their back on the limousine and didn't show him any respect. And of course, when he got to the White House, the doors were closed. The front doors to the White House were closed, and they knocked, and nobody opened them. Nobody came to answer them. Nobody did anything. It was like the place was empty. And they eventually opened the door themselves and stepped across because it was empty, except for the federal agents inside, we believe, ready to arrest them, because they went through with the treason of performing the ceremony of making him president. Also, if you have the opportunity, go back and have a look at the Bible that Joe used, apparently an old family Bible, but go back and have a look at that Bible. If you have the ability to freeze frame and zoom in on it, it's worth a look, just between you, me, and the gatepost. Okay, so what else have we got going on here? Yeah, money makes the medical system go round. I'm really hopeful that's coming to an end very shortly. Somebody asked about Magna Carta 1215 lessons and whatnot. Right, tell you what's going on there. I don't know what's going on there. Fitz and I had a bit of a falling out. I was under a great deal of pressure and stress. Monday nights was causing me a bit of a problem with other things that were happening. Fitz being Fitz and who he is, and quite rightfully expected the show to be happening, every Monday night at a certain time. I was looking at moving the time because it would have been more convenient for me, at least, and given the way the news cycle works, it was more convenient for me to try and move that to later in the week or to pre-record the show and put it up so we could pre-record it at some stage during a day and have it up as extra content, if you like. At any rate, we seem to reach a bit of an impasse. I think the last words that I said to him were, give me a call when you figure it out. And that was a few weeks ago. I did send him a text a couple of weeks ago that said, are we still talking, and haven't received a reply. So take from that what you will. I will reach out again and see whether or not Fitz will come back and have a talk. I do accept a lot of the responsibility for what happened, but doing this show is not always just sitting down and talking to you. And the way that the news cycle is working at the moment, Mondays is a very, and particularly Monday nights, is a very busy night, usually for different things. So trying to be relevant, trying to be current may have upset him a bit, but it is what it is. And certainly if you are interested in Magna Carta lessoning, then can I suggest go back and have a look through the 30-odd episodes that we already have done. In there, many people think, oh, yes, I understand that. But I urge you to go back and watch them a couple of times, because Fitz has a way with words. And sometimes, while I find what he says very easy to accept, it falls into me. It speaks truth to me, and I agree wholeheartedly. I do miss things, and particularly when I've had to read, a lot of stuff in these shows, I don't take a lot of that in. My professional reading career, people said to me all the time, "Oh, how many ads did you read today?" And I say, "Oh, 40." And who did you read them for? Tell me one. I couldn't tell you the name of one of those clients that I'd read an ad for that day. Why? Well, it passes through me. I read it, it passes through me, it gets out. If I remembered everything that I read, I'd be more full of shit than I already am. So yeah, I don't tend to read things and remember them when I'm reading them out loud. I have to go back again and look at them again and read them internally to really understand, or if you like, to really remember what it is I've been reading. And I don't do that a lot with commercials. But with Fitz's stuff, it is always worthwhile to go back and re-listen, because when we think we have a grasp on Magna Carta 1215, there is another nuance that reveals itself. And while we think we know about that too, we really don't. It comes down to our hearts and our souls, our intent. And I guess there is another portion of that I haven't discussed a lot. You hear me basically say it occasionally when we wind up talking with somebody with a common law bent. There are lots and lots and lots of people running different common law education things on the net. Some base themselves around our Constitution, the 1901 piece of shit that you know what I think. Some base themselves around the 1297 Magna Carta. Very few base themselves around 1215. 1215 can be the only legitimate constitution, because the only legitimate way to not make it the constitution has not been triggered. So regardless of what a parliament did or what a bunch of politicians did or how they dethroned a sovereign and made themselves sovereign, all of that, yes, it did happen. That's why they don't want you to know about Magna Carta 1215. That's why they don't want you to understand it. That's why the Australian federal government shows the Magna Carta 1297 in the federal parliament, given to us by the Dutch, I think. They don't want you to know about 1215. It was superseded. It was updated. There's 100,000 excuses. But if anybody ever read it, you would know that the only way to update it or to change it or to kick it out, the only mechanism to do that is one of the articles inside Magna Carta 1215, and that's never been triggered. So when I talk about common law with people today, and it doesn't really matter, while I am a 1215 proponent, I don't care which side you follow. At the end of the day, we don't have an enforcement arm, not the side you follow, not the side I follow, not the side the next bloke follows. No, none of us. We've all got the common law knowledge. We've all got the right idea to a point. The ones who are playing around with the Australian Constitution are fucking right off, but just my opinion. But those of us that are playing around in Magna Carta 1215, and to a lesser extent those that are playing around using 97 as a block to lend on, they usually wind up agreeing with our Constitution. I can't see a way that we can go forward until all of us have an enforcement arm. There is no enforcement arm. We can set up common law courts. We can set up sheriffs. We can set up common law sheriffs and deputies. We can set up trials by jury. However, we have no enforcement arm. There are a lot of people in the common law community who say, I'll just go in and arrest the judge. All right, well, go in and arrest the judge. I haven't seen anybody do it yet. That may have happened, but go in and arrest the judge if that's what you think is going to happen. But where are you going to bring them in front of the people? Who is going to arrest the judge, and who is going to resist the current enforcers, i.e. the police, from coming back and killing you all for abducting a judge? So common law is a great thing. It is a very natural thing to me. I feel it. I believe it. Jury trial is abhorrent to me. Trial by jury rings just naturally true to me. The legal system, and I've had the misfortune to have a little bit to do on the periphery of what's going on with Paul Offey and the Freedom Truck. And I can tell you that the lawyers involved in the DPP and the ACT and in the legal aid department of the ACT have a lot of, I've got to be careful what I say. I am amazed that they are allowed to keep practicing, and possibly they won't be. There is a mountain of evidence supporting Paul Offey's case, a mountain of evidence. And within that mountain of evidence, there is a great deal of evidence showing the lengths that the DPP and others within the DPP have gone to try and make an example of a 3 times brain injured young man who was only trying to follow directions in his truck that day, wound up having it damaged. And we're pretty sure, given what's going on at the moment, there've been some back and forths with legal teams. There's actually been an offer of releasing of the truck, but there had to be a letter signed that said you wouldn't hold the AFP accountable for any damage to the vehicle. Well, we've heard that there is potentially over $25,000 worth of damage to that vehicle. They skull dragged it some kilometres. And if you don't know what skull dragging a vehicle means, nobody there, they had the keys to the truck. They had the keys to the truck. There wasn't an Australian Federal Police officer smart enough to figure out which key it was to put in the key lock to start the truck. So what did they do? Well, they dragged it with all its air brakes locked on. They dragged it some kilometres before they had it hauled up onto the back of a heavy hauler and then put into their yard, where they've had it ever since. Now, it's since been moved around that yard. So we can only assume, unless somebody figured out how to start the truck, that it's been dragged around their holding yard as well. Paul hasn't been allowed in to see what damage there is aside from the smashed window. I think it's been now through one Canberra winter and one Canberra summer. There was some plastic over the window, but whether or not it's still there, who knows? There was a $30,000 stereo system in the inside of that thing. That'll probably be wrecked by now. Could be all sorts of damage to it. But he might have been able to get it back if he was prepared to sign a letter that wasn't going to hold them accountable for the damage they created. My God, that's just one of the weird things going on down there. There are a ton of them, and I'm looking forward to bringing you every one of them. Paul will, on current face value, wind up facing 40 years in jail in the ACT Supreme Court for, well, why? Because he's facing a number of trumped up allegations that are simply not able to be proven in a court. And I know that because I know what the defense is going to be. We have the defense. It's easy seeing what they did, how they did it, and the lies that they have told in their all sorts of different reports and stuff. It's going to be one of the most embarrassing moments, I think, in Australian Federal Police and ACT DPP history. And I look forward to sharing that with you folks every step of the way. In fact, if these people are really stupid enough to put Paul Offey into the Supreme Court in Canberra, let's go back to Canberra and support Paul. All right? There's a reason to go back to Canberra, folks, because that young man has been persecuted from that day they smashed the window on his truck. They have upped the charges, frivolous charges to begin with, minor traffic charges now have been upped to significant jail time, all because, well, of the lies police officers are telling. So we would love to see a few thousand people outside the ACT Supreme Court on the day Paul Offey has to be taken in and his trial started. And we'd love to see you stay there for the duration of the trial. Don't think it'll be very long, but it would be great to see that sort of level of support for Paul. He is doing it very tough. There is a GoFundMe, or not so much a GoFundMe, but if you go to freedomtruck.au, You'll find a link there to a Fundly page if you'd like to donate a few bucks to them, because they are still the better part of $25,000 short of a barrister that they need to represent him in the court. The court will not let him represent himself, apparently, and legal aid will not represent him either. Not because he's a bad person, it's just not what legal aid do. And given my experience with the legal aid he's experienced so far, you've got to be pretty glad they won't go and represent you in the Supreme Court. Bloody frightening. The level of inaction, I think, is the best word I can use at the moment. The level of inaction demonstrated by legal aid in Paul's case is concerning. Concerning. I'll leave it at that because there'll be a lot more we will say down the track. So what's going on out in Ireland? Ireland are now forcing people to sell their property to the government. Why would they be doing that? Why would the people being forced to sell, putting in a new highway or something like that? Or is it something far more sinister? Yeah, I had a look at this the other day too, JJ, the Make Australia Healthy Again lawsuit. We'll actually have a talk about that. I've put a request into there to get somebody to have a bit of a chat with us too. So hopefully that'll come back in the not too distant future. Just having a bit of a scan down, folks, to see what there is. Oh, this is good news, Shell. My place Ballina will be up and running this Saturday. Okay, beautiful. Let me know. I think some mutual friends are still in Ballina. Maybe they're not. Oh, shit. Maybe they're not. They might have headed back the other way. I will find that out. Regardless, if they're not there, I don't care. We're still coming down. Saturday. Oh, shit. Saturday's going to be hard. I've got 2 other commitments I have to do this Saturday. But if it can't be this Saturday, Shell, let me know the next event. But yeah, I've got a show I'm meant to be doing here Saturday night, and it's actually Paul Offey's brother Michael's birthday on Saturday, and I've been invited to his birthday party. So I thought I might pop along to that. But thank you for the offer. I'll have to move it a week, if that's all good. Having a bit of a look. Any updates on the tax investigation? Interestingly, no. Well, yes and no. So the tax investigation was handed off to a couple of interesting folks in the Parliament. They were keen to go and do some investigation in it themselves. Have not heard a word back from them at this stage. Let's face it, they could probably get a little deeper into it than I could, but I have not heard anything back. I will make that phone call and see whether or not I can get an answer for you on that one, Toxic. And yeah, I'd be very interested. Yes, you're right there too, Paul. Thanks very much. Somebody sent this to me the other day. I don't know if it was you or not, Paul. Beyond the Great Reset, 25 minutes everybody should see. Absolutely. And in fact, do I have it open on one of these windows? No, I don't. It is a, like Paul says, 25 minutes that is well worth watching. I'm just going to see if I can get the link for you, and I'll post it up in the chat. That seems to be it. What was that? All right. So copy that, and I'll drop it in the link now, folks. So this is well worthwhile having a look at. I saw it yesterday or the day before, and it's one of those things you could actually watch 2 or 3 times and get more and more out of. Well worthwhile having a look at. So, yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks for that. Good pickup. I have been sent a number of videos that I have watched. Unfortunately, I've swallowed a few painkillers while watching them, and so to talk about them, I might be misrepresenting them in some way. I don't have that problem at the moment, thankfully, and I will be going back and rewatching a couple of these things that I have a bit of a dim memory of. Speaking of Michelle's, hello, Michelle Bradley Smith. We waved at you the other day as we came through your part of the world. I was speaking with Michelle Palmer today, and you might recall Michelle ran for IMOP in the Blue Mountains in the recent New South Wales election. I was going to get her on for a chat in the week leading up to the election. Unfortunately, with everything else that was going on, she sort of got missed in the mix, and I apologise profusely to her today. She is doing remarkably well. Okay, she's not going to get elected, but she's only 300 votes shy of 4%. In the Blue Mountains. Now, that's a great result for her. In fact, that's a better result than anybody else we know got in New South Wales. So she should be commended for that. And it's a great response. She worked very hard with very little external promotion. I think I had spoken to her maybe just as she was deciding to run. And her only promotion was what she did locally. But she did what most good politicians do. She got out and used the boot leather up, shook hands, kissed babies, made speeches, and travelled all over Sydney and predominantly into the North Shore, spreading the message that she was going to represent the people. She got a very good result, and let's all say a few prayers for her and hope that those extra 300 votes come her way. It couldn't happen to a nicer lady who really does want to do nothing more than represent the people, do the right thing for the people, to help the people. And in doing so, of course, she started the My Place Blue Mountains. So her My Place is a much smaller My Place than most. I think you'd be pretty much tapped out with 30 or 40 people on seats around there, but maybe get a few more. I have promised her that we are going to come down and do a show from the Blue Mountains, from her magnificent My Place. So expect that in the next few weeks. We'll make the trip south and make good on that promise. And there are some folks in South Australia who've been calling on me to get over there for a while. Vince is the bloke we need to talk to coordinate the South Australian part of the world. So if you want to send Vince an email, vince@vofhq.com, tell him what part of South Australia you're in, because he's also in South Australia, and we'll figure out the run from there. But if I'm coming south, we're going to come all the way and head to South Australia. I know that Cooper Pedy was in the mix. I want to say that Whyalla was in the mix, somewhere in Port Augusta, somewhere down South Victor Harbour and further south of Victor Harbour, and a show in Adelaide. Manham, of course, was looking to try and do one around Mount Gambier. So we'll see whether or not we can get one happening there. But certainly all those other places we will be visiting. So looking forward to seeing you there, folks. Can't wait to get this all on the road and catching up with you everywhere. There is, of course, a few other different things happening which are in the background at the moment. We're negotiating different things. It may change our timelines in certain ways, particularly if a certain opportunity comes to fruition. When that happens, we will change the way we do the show a little bit, and we may change the time of day we do the show a little bit, but we should still be able to do a show. We will be doing a little bit more on the road, though, just as a bit of a hint of what's coming up. Going to have a little bit of a scroll quickly. I've been going, nearly an hour, so I don't want to hold you up too long on your Tuesday night. Lots of news about chemtrails coming out today too. There are light planes flying around doing low-level chemtrail, or they're not chemtrails. What they're doing is adding certain elements into specific vapor levels, or if you like, water levels in clouds and all that. If you like, it is the seed at a lower level, 14,000 to 8,000 feet. And they do get around in smaller aircraft. The aircraft that we have video of has spray paraphernalia off its trailing edges, coming off at, I don't know, maybe a 25, 30 degree angle off the trailing edges. And pilot admitted what he was doing. They're a clouds eating business. So, I'm going to get my boys onto that, and we'll see what they make of it. We are still finding it incredibly difficult to get photos of the aircraft that are doing this in Australia. They tend to roll straight into hangars when they turn up at the airports that they land at. How interesting is that? Oh, and there was a very interesting Australian flight. It was a large Australian military jet that flew from here to Hawaii to America, in Washington or around Washington, D.C., then flew to London, then came back the same way. That jet left from Amberley but returned to Darwin a few days ago. When it landed, it too rolled straight into a big hangar. But that every kilometre of that jet's trip has been tracked. Everywhere it went, it was hangared as soon as it landed. So nobody knows what went on in there, who, if anyone, got on or off. So take that as you will. Might just be an ordinary military kind of things, but I don't know. It does seem a little bad. Sandy, you wonderful lady, thank you so much. Now, folks, if you're in the market for a new pet and you happen to have a bit of land and you like bigger animals, Sandy might be able to help. Sandy and her wonderful other half, Baz, are the folks who own the Donkey Sanctuary, that we should be doing more to raise money for food for the donkeys. Some hay, that would be bloody awesome. Now, I'm not sure how many Sandy's got on the property at the moment. She had a bit of an influx last time we spoke. I think she'd got another 30 or something turn up. So the problem that animal carers are having at the moment, is a huge influx of animals, all sorts of animals, because a lot of people are dying and leaving their animals behind. Who knew that so many people had so many donkeys? Now, she is one of the few donkey sanctuaries. In fact, she is Australia's donkey sanctuary. And there is a reason that we don't talk about where the donkey sanctuary is, and go into great detail about that, because donkeys are highly sought after by, guess who? The Chinese. Now, if you are weak of stomach, turn your telly down a bit right now, because I'm going to tell you what they do to them. Briefly, I won't go into great detail. Apparently, under the skin of the donkey, there is a gel-like substance that is useful for a variety of Chinese medicines. I believe a lot of it has to do with skincare and, well, I don't know, if it's not grated up tiger penis, maybe it's donkey gel that you rub on yourself. I don't know. However, you cannot extract this gel while the donkey is dead. So what the Chinese have learnt to do is to skin the donkey alive and scrape the gel off the body or off the skin, and then use that in whatever little concoction they're eating, drinking, swallowing, painting on themselves, or doing whatever to. So it is important that if you do happen to have a donkey and you get a Chinaman ringing you up saying, oh, you want to sell your donkey, you understand these people are not donkey lovers, not animal lovers at all. There are parts of China where there is nothing, no birds, no animals of any kind, because they've all been eaten to extinction, everything. That's why they now eat insects. They can't eat them out, although they're trying. The Chinese are very keen on donkey gel, let's call it, for whatever reason. So that's why it's important that we save the donkeys from that. In fact, Sandy has told me on previous occasions that she's had phone calls that said, how many have you got? We'll take them all. And she had over 60 at that stage. So if you can help Sandy out, because keeping the donkeys protected is almost as important as keeping them fed. And she gets a lot of damaged donkeys. By that, I mean psychologically damaged donkeys. Donkeys that have been abused by their owners in various different circumstances. I think she tells the story that one of her donkeys was known as Fuck Off. That's what he thought his name was, because he lived with cows. And every time the cows came up to get milked, he got told to fuck off. So he thought his name was Fuck Off. He's not a well donkey either, but he is getting a lot better. Sandy, last time I was talking to her, at least he was on the improve. So thank you, Sandy. You're a gorgeous lady, and that big fella of yours is a pretty nice bloke too. I would say give him a kiss, but I don't want him getting carried away. You know how it is. So, yes, if you want to help out, then get in touch with me. If you want to help out Sandy and the Donkey Sanctuary, then please get in touch with me. I'll put you in touch with her directly, provided you're not in the market to do anything other than love a donkey or feed one, because that's pretty much where we're at. Just trying to catch up with a few questions here. You guys are having some interesting conversations in the chat. I really love that about this. We do get some really interesting conversations in the chat. It's like quite a family. In fact, I was talking to somebody the other day who said they don't really listen to me while I'm live. They go into the chat and get involved in there. And then when the show finishes, they get out of the chat, they go back and watch the show. Sort of like 2 or 3 stories in one, I guess. So I'm really glad that people are finding this an area where they can sit down, they can have a conversation. You can have a dissenting opinion. You just want to have some facts to back it up. And if you're a troll, don't waste your time. Nobody cares. We are about trying to find a solution here. Sometimes I may not look like it, but we are trying to find a solution for us all. There is no point in finding a solution that works for me, or me telling you what works for me and having you agree with it, because at some point you're not going to agree with it. We need to formulate something together. And that's where the log of claims is so important that John Wilson put together. I was going to catch up with John today, but obviously with what happened with my foot, I didn't go out and see him. The plan is to go and see him tomorrow if I can walk. I don't really know that I could get up onto his boat. He might have to come and see me. But if that is the case, then we'll do a live tomorrow and have another chat about the log of claims. It is important, folks, if you haven't seen it already, please go and download it. It's at vofhq.com. It's right there on the front page, and it's a downloadable PDF. Print it out. Show your friends, show your family, have a talk about it. What do you think about what's inside that log of claims? Do you agree with it? Don't you agree with it? What do you think could be added or amended? We are looking for your input. Now, we are not looking for criticism. Somebody has sent me, and I'm pretty sure it's just a troll, has sent a very long essay on, it wasn't about the log of claims. It was about a perception of the log of claims. And right off the ball. This is merely a starting point, folks. Merely a starting point. John certainly doesn't believe that he is the font of all knowledge in this regard. I certainly don't believe that I am. We both consider this document important enough to offer up to you simply because it gives all of us in the freedom movement one solid base to work from. That is the kind of people in the freedom movement that we want, that the people who can work towards the goals and the points raised in that document are the kinds of people that will build a better Australia for everyone, not just ourselves, not just the trolls, not just the politicians, but for everyone. And this document can't do that without you at least having some input into it and acknowledging that, yes, you would agree, Yes, you would agree, but you would like to see something amended. Yes, you agree, but I think you left this bit out. Or no, I don't agree. I wouldn't sign it, and I wouldn't sign it for these reasons. Please tell us those reasons. Okay? Don't criticize the document. Don't criticize, and yes, the document probably does need to be syntaxed. I believe there is or something like that happening at the moment. So once the document is syntaxed, it will read a little differently, but there'll be certainly no confusion about every point. That will be something we'll bring to you here as well. There are also a couple of interesting other events happening at the moment. There's a fellow called Desi we're going to have a chat to later this week, I hope. And without getting into his story too much, it's going to be one that's going to shock the shit out of you. You're going to be appalled again. And unfortunately, there are just so many of those popping up at the moment. I'm getting phone calls and emails from people every day, from folks who are just, genuine, wonderful human beings that have been kicked out of their home for no reason other than the rental has gone up 30%. Interestingly, another range of stories that have come out in the last 48 hours or so have been about rental agents. I got a first-hand story from somebody renting a property the other day that were told they were going to get a 30% rate increase. Now, it was a large property, a commercial property, if you like, big shed. Now, this fella said, I don't know why are you putting it up 30%? The agent said, oh, well, that's what the owner is requiring. You're paying the water, you're paying the rates, and got to pay another 30% on the shed. Now, unbeknownst to the agent, the guy in the shed had met the owner, knew the owner personally, and he rang him and said, is this right? Are you putting the rent up 30%? And he said, no, not putting the rent up at all. We have an undertaking that you stay there for that same price for the next 5 years or whatever it was. And he said, that's what I thought, but your rental agent's here telling me, or sent me a note that says they're putting it up 30%. So he said, we'll get the agent back out to the property and have me on the phone when you talk to them. And that's exactly what happened. The rental agent has come out to discuss the issue with the property, and old mates had the owner on the phone and heard the agent say, the owner has instructed us to raise the rent by 30%. At which point the owner spoke up and the agent shit himself and lost the gig. Now, how many times is that happening in the rental market around Australia right now, be it in commercial rentals like that or in private rentals? How many times is this property manager, this agent, putting the rent up and actually passing on all of that rental increase to the owner? How many times has the owner said, look, I really don't need you to put the thing up, and they do it anyway? Who checks on them? Who checks? Who would know? Well, I'm sure somebody in the rental agency would know. And the real estate agent doing that would know, because it would show in their books somewhere. But that would be something I think we need to start investigating too. Maybe every renter should have the right to directly contact the owner of the property to confirm the outrageous lifting of the rental price that the agent seems to be pushing. And is that really the case? If knowing the circumstances of the people that you are renting the house to, would that stop you putting the rent up 30%? I mean, nobody's saying you shouldn't put it up in line with, GDP rises or whatever. But putting it up 30%, and in Queensland, they've only just grabbed that by the scruff of the neck. But it has been officially documented that in a great many places around Queensland, rent has gone up over 40% in 12 months to people who are currently renting properties. Over 40% in some areas. In fact, over 60% in some areas. So how much is the property management business responsible for this? How much are the real estates responsible for this rental crisis, do you think? I think it bears some investigation. Just between you, me, and the gatepost, I'd like to hear something about that. I've had some dealings with the real estate industry. I did a radio show, conceived a radio show, national radio show that was highly involved with all the big real estate agencies or companies. And yeah, I got to learn a few little interesting tidbits in the background. You'll never hear the real estate companies talking down the market. They'll always say it's turning or it's coming up, and there are reasons for that. But there are a lot of other interesting tricks that they use as well. And who's to say that the housing real estate agents aren't doing to the renters what the commercial real estate agents are doing to their renters, giving themselves a huge windfall by putting up rent when the owner hasn't asked for it, therefore isn't expecting it in the bank account every month. Get where I'm going? Times like that, I guess you probably wish that you were on the road and you could be one of those dickheads. Just clean the bastards up.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!